So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome all of you at the international conference under the title Balkans Ambitions and Polish Inspirations. It's a great pleasure for me, for us, to host you at the Warsaw University, at the University of Warsaw. Welcome our distinguished guests. Let me introduce them. Welcome Professor Sambor Grucha, Vice Rector for Cooperation and Human Resources, University of Warsaw. Welcome Professor Goran Ilik, Vice Rector for Science, University St. Clement Ochrydzki from Bitola. Welcome Mr. Patryk Błaszczak, Deputy Director of the European Policy Department, the Minister of Foreign Policy, Poland. Welcome Mr. Roman Kowalski from the same department, from the European Policy Department, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Welcome Mrs. Magdalena Opałka from the Department of Development Cooperation, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Welcome Professor Bojana Najmowska from University of Skopje. I'd like to welcome also our guests from different embassies from Romania, Albania, and Austria. Welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, this conference is a part of a project which are the part of the public tasks supported by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland within the grand competition Public Diplomacy 2022. The conference is also supported by the University of Warsaw and one of the law firms. The main goal of this project is to support our friends from the Western Balkan states on their way to the European Union. We want to share with our experience on this field. Our main partners on this project are University of St. Clement Ochrydzki from Bitola, from North Macedonia, University of Skopje, University of Montenegro, University of Nice, and Institute for Research and European Studies from North Macedonia. Also, we cooperate in this project with Centrum for International Relations, one of the biggest and famous think tanks in Poland. Our main goals of this project is to make closer and closer cooperation with our partners. And I hope that this conference and this project is only the beginning of long-term cooperation between our universities. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me give a floor Professor Sambor Grucha, the Vice Rector for Cooperation and Human Resources from the University of Warsaw. Mr. Rector, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to the opening ceremony. And on behalf of our Rector, Rector Nowak, would like to cordially welcome our distinguished guests at the University of Warsaw. Let's say our foreigner guest, because I am every time confused to say to my colleagues from the University of Warsaw, welcome at the University of Warsaw. It's nice to see you here. Thank you very much for organizing this conference, and thank you very much to all participants or contributors who organized this conference. It's very nice every time to have at the University of Warsaw an international conference, not only international because of the participants, but also by the organizers. So thank you very much. I see it's very familiar atmosphere here, and I wish you this familiar atmosphere not only during the conference, of course, interesting discussions. I wish you also a nice stay in Warsaw, perhaps in Poland. The weather is cold, but it's not raining, so I wish you also a bit time to visit University of Warsaw, our historical campus, one of 3 our campuses, and perhaps you will find time to see a bit of Warsaw, historic part of Warsaw, if not only the better. So, welcome again at the University of Warsaw. I wish you nice and interesting conference, and once again, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rector. And now I'd like to invite Professor Goran Ilić, Vice Rector for Science from University of Ochrydzki from Bitola.
Very much, my dear friend, dear guests, dear colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and privilege to address you on behalf of the Rector of University St. Clement Ochrydzki in Bitola, North Macedonia, Professor Igor Nelkovski, and my personal name, here at the conference Balkan Ambitions and Polish Inspiration. Allow me to extend particular greetings to our dear colleagues and friends, Professor Sambor Gucia, Vice Rector for Cooperation and Human Resources at the University of Warsaw, Professor Kamil Zajaczkowski, Director of the Center for Europe at the same university, Mr. Patryk Blaszczak, Deputy Director of the European Policy Department at Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland. An ostensible confirmation of the significance of our conference is the joint organization involving a number of respectable universities, institutes and centers from Poland, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia and so on, including our University St. Clement Ochrydzki, which was given the honor to be one of the project partners. In this regard, I would like to thank our friends from the Center of Europe for their efforts in organizing this important international event, as well as to welcome the tremendous support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland, without whose support this project would not have been implemented. This is very profound correlation, as we have many things in common: Balkan cooperation, regional and general challenges for the current moment, all set against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world and in the light of the most recent events, ambitiously striving to redesign the world as we know it. Fortunately, the focus on the topics to be discussed best reflects our common resoluteness to commit ourselves to the global security challenges, to the European integration, the integrative security, and so on. Topics that reaffirm the need to strengthen the democracy, peace, and stability via promoting mutual confidence, dialogue, and cooperation. Joined in our aims as partners, we consider the today's event as a continuation of the path we are all bound to take together through scientific and experts' observation, to remain dedicated to the current issues and situations in Poland, in Macedonia, the Balkan region, and the wider. With sizable academic responsibility, I do believe that this latest scientific debate will generate scientifically based notions and solutions in the light of the new tendencies and trends. Dear participants, dear fellows in spirit and in science, this is an opportunity to express our gratitude for the continuous and unconditional support provided by the Republic of Poland in terms of EU integration process, which is a long-term investment in the peace and stability on the Balkans and broader, across the Europe. Last but not least, I would like to emphasize the significance of our academic communication, cooperation, and to add the safest weapon we all possess is our science. In that vein, we should go on with our commitment to providing continuity in and setting up new priorities. In the name of that, let me wish you a successful and productive conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Rector. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Patryk Błaszczak, Deputy Director of the European Policy Department, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Poland.
Vice Rectors, dear Professor, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to represent the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs at today's very aptly named conference. Let me start by saying that the events of the last few days have made it once again painfully obvious that how big a challenge does the Russian criminal aggression against Ukraine pose to the European and indeed global security architecture. Poland, as Ukraine's neighbor, has been very much engaged since the very beginning of the aggression in assisting Ukraine, politically, financially, militarily, and from the humanitarian perspective, with a clear aim of helping the country to protect sovereignty and full territorial integrity. But the challenges caused by the Russian aggression are, of course, very much felt throughout Europe and beyond. From our perspective, the Western Balkans region is in this context particularly vulnerable in areas of energy and food security, cyber threats and disinformation. Poland, bilaterally, through the Berlin process and the V4, as well as within the EU, is ready to work with our partners in the region in addressing these challenges. We are also part of all EU and NATO missions in the region, and this will remain so in the foreseeable future. Our engagement and close cooperation with the Western Balkan countries is, however, very much deep-rooted and stems from the firm double conviction that the place of the Western Balkan countries is in the EU, and that safeguarding peace, stability and prosperity of the region lies in our common mutual interest. Poland has always been a strong supporter of the European integration of all Western Balkan countries. Our support for European integration of Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia will not change this. On the contrary, we have been systematically increasing our engagement in the region in the past years, and we will continue to do so. As an example, this year we have increased threefold the development funds available to our embassies in the region, and with particular emphasis on education, on healthcare and on entrepreneurship. And we have also reinstated the Western Balkans as one of the priorities of Polish public diplomacy, which allowed us incidentally to support also today's conference. In the coming months, we are planning, among other initiatives, to open a Polish Cultural Institute and a Foreign Trade Office in Belgrade, and establishing consular relations with Kosovo on 8 November has opened up the perspectives for setting up a Polish consulate in Pristina. Throughout the past years, we have been trying to support the European integration process of the Western Balkan countries, not only politically, but also through very concrete projects aimed at sharing our own experiences from the pre-accession period, but also from the 18 years of our own membership in the EU. We do believe that the Polish experience in numerous fields can be useful and interesting to the countries of the region. This applies particularly to the effective and efficient use of EU funds, functioning of the local government, environmental protection, energy security and transition, or fintech solutions, to name just a few areas, and I'm glad that some of them will also be touched upon during today's conference. We also have a rich and overwhelmingly positive experience in fostering regional cooperation in Central Europe that I know is looked upon with certain interest by some of our Western Balkan partners. We try to share our experience in subject areas that constitute particular negotiating chapters within the enlargement process through our so-called Skopje, Tirana and Belgrade conferences, the next editions of which we hope to hold next year as well. We also invite civil servants from the region to Poland, both in the framework of the Enlargement Academy run by the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in the framework of the Civil Servants Mobility Program sponsored by the Visegrad Group. Finally, let me just say that I hope that today's conference will further contribute to identifying those potential areas of cooperation and inspiration in both directions between Poland and countries of the Western Balkans, and I wish you a very fruitful and stimulating debate. Thank you.
So, Mr. Director, thanks a lot, and like I said, I hope that this conference is only the beginning of long-term cooperation between our universities, between cooperation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and University of North Macedonia and from our partners in different parts of Western Balkans. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you also a fruitful conference. And now I invite you to panel number 1, and I invite Professor Bogdan Guralczyk, who will be a chair of the first panel, and I invite my colleagues who take part in this panel. Professor Bonikowska, Professor Ozgun Erler Baehr, and some people will be connected by the internet. Professor I think Todor Lakic. So I invite, and thanks a lot, Mr. Rector. Mr. Rector.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bogdan Guralczyk, representing Centrum for Europe. Here in Warsaw, we have the first panel. In a troubling times, as you know, this is the time of transition and change. Just 2 days ago, here in Poland, we had an incident or an accident which widespread it around the globe, which is showing how important things are undergoing, both in Poland and in our immediate neighborhood. And in this particular time, it is time for our conference and our first panel. We have a conference entitled about Balkans and Polish ambitions and inspirations, while here we will focus on both sides. And we have 1 hour 45 minutes, which is sometimes for one professor. Here we have 6 or even 7 panelists. 2 out of the 6 will be connected online from abroad. 1 is pre-recorded statement. So as someone who was all my life dealing with, on the one side on Hungary, on the other side on China, so I can represent illiberal democracy, and from this perspective I will give the floor to every participant for 12 minutes. After 10 minutes time I will announce that time is coming, and afterwards I take an axe and you know what can be available in the illiberal attitude. It's partially a joke, but this is necessary for us to keep the time, because after our panel we still have 2 other panels, and we don't want to prolong the whole conference until the weekend, which is upcoming. In this respect, I will first announce who is the panelists and later give the floor to first of them. First will be Professor Goran Ilic. He was just presenting himself in introductory remarks. Good friend of us, main engine from the Balkan side in this particular respect. And myself, we were fortunate to travel. I was even twice to him in Bitola, so already a good friend of ours. He is familiar with this room. He was participating in our anniversary of Centrum for Europe, which was the same place. So he is almost a part of us, if I may say so. So Professor Goran Ilic, welcome. Later on, also presenting during the presentation of our director, Professor Zajączkowski, Dr. Małgorzata Bonikowska, representing one of the most influential and visible think tanks here in Poland and abroad, and also an important engine in our project here, and we hope to follow it. Later on, we will have Professor Todor Lakic. He will connect us from Montenegro online. After that, we will have Professor Małgorzata Łakota-Mitzker, also talking about Montenegro. And after that, sitting on the left-hand side of me is another old Polish hand from Istanbul, Ozgun. We know each other for more than a decade, if I may say so. She is coming to us, I'm coming to her. Right now she is more frequent visitor to us because the inflation rate in Istanbul is higher than in Poland. We are competing, but still better to be in Poland right now than vice versa. But maybe next year the situation will change, and you have anniversary events, a lot of them. 2023, please remember, Turkey will be a very important anniversary of the revolution and change Atatürk. So welcome also Ozgun. And finally, Professor Rowan, don't mix the names. We have Professor Illik and we will have Professor Illich from University of Niš. From Balkans, and his intervention is pre-recorded. So without further ado, I'm watching my watch. I was observing to have 12 minutes for Professor Goran Illich. After 10 minutes time, I will tell you that your time will be finished soon. Thank you, Professor Goran, the floor is yours. This one.
Dear Professor Bogdan, thank you very much for your introduction and for your positive attitude. I'm totally agree with you. I'm part of you and you are part of us also. We have a very good relationship, a very good friendship. For today panel, I decided to speak about possibilities for establishing closer Balkan cooperation. And I took the case of Visegrad Group, or V4, and the challenges of Euro integration process, resembling the possibility for building up such group in the Balkans, because we have a lot of various type of groupings in Balkans. Adriatic Charter, Black Sea Cooperation, we have Berlin Process, we have Open Balkan Initiative, etc., etc. And everything is made up because of the reconciliation of the Balkans, realization of post-conflict challenges of the region with main aim, Euro-Atlantic integration of the whole Balkans. You are familiar with the V4 grouping in general. In my presentation, how can I, okay, because I have some tables to move the slide. Okay, the next one. Okay. This is a table in which is comprised all elements of V4 cooperation as V4 attributes, as I call them. It is very interesting to know that the scope of Visegrad Group is extensive, which is initially focused on political and economic coordination, but currently there is more emphasis on areas from the other sectors of security, most notable from the societal one. According to the indicator of number of dominant actors within that group, within the arrangement, there is no dominant actor on the agenda, so it is a plural initiative. Regarding the indicator of division of powers between the initiative and the member states of the V4, it is consultative although it has increasingly promoted policy-oriented cooperation, still V4 remained mainly a forum for political coordination. According to the degree of institutionalization, it appears as ad hoc political dialogue. Regarding financial sources and resources, is partially supported, but I want to emphasize the role and significance of International Visegrad Fund here in this group. The solidarity principle is supported, and the solidarity is real within this. In this case, one of the main examples and old examples for solidarity in this group is Slovakia's support by other members of V4 for its NATO accession. Regarding the civil society indicator, it is fully supported because International Visegrad Fund fully supports the civil society, non-governmental organization, municipalities, local governments, and so on. And regarding the political will for this, for maintenance of this group is promising and is real, because the V4 is directed towards its deepening and thus for contributing to the European Union improvement and advancement, for which the newly adopted or the adopted Bratislava Declaration is an excellent example. So within my research, I tried to replicate the V4 experience with these aforementioned indicators to the Balkan circumstances, because considering the Balkans, there is a lot of problems and a lot of foreign interventions, especially in today's world. Interventions by Russia, by China, etc., etc. And moreover, that the spirits of the past are not yet disappeared from the region. Also, I was very inspired by the thought of our former Yugoslav Nobel laureate Ivo Andrić, who in one of his magnificent books wrote the following sentence. I will quote him. He speak about the Balkans, about the Balkan peoples. Our people lives past bitter and empty, among malicious, vengeful thoughts and periodic revolts. To anything else, they are insensitive and inaccessible. One sometimes wonder whether the spirit of the majority of the Balkan people has not been forever poisoned, and that perhaps they will never again be able to do anything other than suffer violence or inflict it. So in this sentence is kept the all Balkan issues regarding the stability of the region and the sense of regional ownership, which is very important in order to reconcile the region as a whole. In that sense, I tried to replicate, as I said previously, the V4 experience and the indicators of the V4 groups, which I read. So, as a most suitable regional initiative to analyze is the CECP, or Southeast European Cooperation Process, which is the most extensive form of Balkan cooperation. Besides the other forms of Balkan cooperation, for example, the last one is Open Balkan, but Open Balkan includes only Macedonia, Serbia and Albania, and maybe in future and Montenegro. But it is a very small initiative in regards to members. The CECP is the most extensive. In CECP there are any Balkan states and Slovenia also. From Slovenia to Moldova, Turkey, whole Western Balkans, Greece, etc., etc., whole geographical Balkan. When I analyzed the CECP, or Southeast European Cooperation Process, I conclude that there is several attributes typical for this kind of cooperation, which indicates some conclusions about the future of Balkan groupings. At first, regarding the scope, as I said, it is very extensive. It covers the whole Balkan region. Never, despite the Balkan states are EU or non-EU countries, that doesn't matter. Regarding the number of dominant actors within the cooperation, there is no dominant actor. Maybe during the establishment of this initiative, Greece was tended to, to make its influence dominant, but because of other countries from the region, today this initiative is without dominant actors, and Greece has not any dominance above the all other member states. Regarding the division of powers between the member states, it is mainly consultative. Please, yes, and another slide. Okay, CCP, not Visegrad. Okay. Regarding the degree of institutionalization, it is very important to be emphasized that we talk about ad hoc political dialogue. Regarding the financial sources and resources, it is fully supported initiative because all the CCP activities, mainly high-level reunions, summits, meetings, are financed by the member states. And today is formed Western Balkans Fund, very similar to the International Visegrad Fund, but it is not a part of this regional cooperation. It is a part of Berlin process. Then we have the indicator of solidarity, and this is the most vital and crucial one in relation to the V4, because the solidarity within the CCP is on a declarative and rhetorical level. There is no real solidarity, because I can say, from the perspective of Macedonia, we have a lot of problems with Greece, who added many times they added veto against Macedonian accession talks to European Union because of the name issue, because Greece do not accept that we have a right to call us Macedonia. So now we are North Macedonia, despite the fact that we are in the southern part of the Europe. So we have some Nordic prefixes now. After the name change, we thought that we will start the accession negotiations with European Union and NATO, but we succeed only with NATO. And we was integrated fully in NATO during the Corona pandemic, online, as 48 member states of NATO. Yes, yes, Professor, thank you. And after NATO, we had another blockage by Bulgaria, because of our identity. So we changed the name, and now we are on the right track to change our identity. So the solidarity within this group is totally declarative, and it is manifested because of the United States influence here in Balkans, not because of some real passionate or sincere relations between Balkan countries. According to the civil society indicator, is not supported because this initiative is totally top-to-down initiative, and it does not acknowledge the meaning of down-to-top relations, but it is on governmental or intergovernmental level. The civil society is not included. I hope that through the Open Balkan Initiative, the civil society will be included more in the decision-making process. The political will in this group is declarative also, because it is mainly based on the egoistic and nationalist or national, to be more softer in my vocabulary, of the member countries of the CCP, who are under influence of the biggest Macedonian ally and partner, United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping your time, and wishing you to keep Open Balkans and Open Balkans and CCP as open as it is right now. Maybe we can join in with our projects in the future inside of this institutional framework. Ladies and gentlemen, next is not only Małgorzata Bonikowska, but also Agnieszka Ostrowska, an engine who is I understand a presenter of this intervention, but look at the topic, Poland and in NATO. Could you imagine hottest one? When you look into CNN, BBC, and world media, nothing else, just Poland and NATO. So we are looking forward what fresh news we have in this particular case with eagerness and open approach as well. Małgorzata, and two of you, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bogdan. I'm very happy that the Center for International Relations is a partner in this project with the University of Warsaw, which is also my university, because I teach also at the Center for Europe at the Warsaw University. So thanks for this cooperation. Me and my colleague and program director in the center, Agnieszka Ostrowska, we were reflecting on NATO membership of Poland and the reflections, the lessons learned for the Balkans. And let me just be very synthetic. I know we have only just 12 minutes. So, well, let me present what came out of our discussion. First of all, if I can ask for the next slide. When Poland tried to enter NATO, you can just look how many things happened on the way. And these were the times when we thought we are very secure. The Europeans thought it's absolutely safe place on earth. The 90s, in my opinion, I'm European, I've done European studies, I worked in the for the European Commission for 7 years. I worked in the Ministry of European Integration. So I remember very well these times, and this was a perception that there is no better time for Europe, and there is no safer environment. And this was reflected in the strategy, the first European global strategy, security strategy, written by the team of Javier Solana, the first, let's call him Minister of Foreign Affairs of Europe. In 2003. Despite that, and that's the lesson, I think very important lesson to learn, for the Balkans, Poland was so determined to enter NATO and the European Union. But NATO, we entered first. We were able to enter NATO in 1999, together with Hungary, Czechs, and Slovaks, while we still were, having negotiations with the European Union. And we joined the EU slightly later in 2004. So this shows you how important for us was this organization, despite the fact that there was no more Warsaw Pact. And then finally, you see it in the red, we not only wanted to enter NATO, but in the same time we had to get rid of Russian troops on the Polish soil. It's only in 1993 when the Russians left Poland. Russian army had soldiers here, and it was quite a substantial presence. So to us, it was really a U-turn, complete U-turn, and despite the fact that no one was expecting that time that the newborn Russian Federation will be a threat, because Russia was at that time in a really bad shape, destabilized, and looking for maybe a path for democracy. And we were hoping actually very much that Russia will be a democratic country, a partner to the European countries and to the European Union, newly born by the Treaty of Maastricht. But despite this, Polish political elites, and here we had a complete bipartisan agreement. All the political forces in Poland seen the situation same way. We prefer to be in NATO, just for this, just in case something happened. So the lesson is that when you look back, and when you look back to this 99, I repeat, completely safe environment, no danger, no threat, etc. That we did it, now we are having just like, oof, how just great that we did it. Because what if we didn't do that? Where Poland would have been today? Comparing to Moldova, or comparing to all these countries who are not in the NATO, even Ukraine itself. And Ukraine itself, it's the best example what can happen if Poland didn't join NATO that time. So I would stress it's really a kind of a wisdom and strategic thinking of our political elites in the long run. And that's an important lesson for the Balkans. And I think what's important is that it's worth to be bipartisan in such crucial decisions the country is making. This is not about a political quarrel. This shouldn't be, an argument between the parties. It should be supported by all. Of course, we had also a strong support by the Polish society for this direction. There's no doubt about it. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that, of course, the political environment, comparing the 90s and today, completely changed. So it is not about us, it's about the world, which created a lot of problems for Poland, for the European Union per se, because the organization, and we discuss it often with Bogdan also, the EU is not a state, it's not a federal state, it's an organization with elements of confederation, maybe in cooperation in some areas, but it's 27 sovereign states coordinating foreign and security policy. So as far as security is concerned, we are not playing as one. We have to coordinate, and we have a principle of unanimous decision-making process until today within the EU, which is a serious challenge because we are confronted by states. It's China, it's Russia, which is a federal state, it's even United States. It's a state. We are not. So in this regard, the whole EU is weak. We are strong economically, but we are weak as far as foreign and security policy. And despite that, and that's, a lesson, an important lesson, that despite that, in a situation of very high threat, we are able to operate as one, at least in crucial decisions, such as sanctions against Russia. This is a foreign policy, this needs unanimous decision, and the EU is able to make it constantly since 2014 in a smaller scale, but since the February 2022, constantly 8 packages of sanctions plus the 9th package in preparation. But it's very difficult, so the EU is now at this stage to discuss what to do with this. We should really reflect on this, we should think about the future, same way like we thought about the future in the 90s, how to operate better in such an unstable political and military environment, when NATO became a very important pillar of the European security. And here, the third lesson would be that since the 90s until today, the perception of NATO and the role of NATO made a circle. Because I remember in the 90s, the discussion was, since the Warsaw Pact was not existing anymore and the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, please the next. Then why can't we just get rid of NATO? Maybe we should just close down this alliance as well, because the major purpose of NATO was to protect Europe, Western Europe, against Soviet Union's attack. So there were discussions like this, what to do with NATO. I'm just giving you the whole list of what was happening at that time. And there were also other solutions. The other option was, if we need NATO, let's maybe build on the basis of NATO, the European security pillar. But this was difficult because, as you know, in the NATO we have also Canada and the US, first of all the US, and also countries who are not in the EU, like Turkey, and in the 90s there were even more of them. So it wasn't an easy scenario. And finally there was a third scenario, to use NATO somewhere else, maybe for the global security architecture, especially when the Security Council of the UN is not is not working maybe so quickly and we need some structure to be used extra for stability and peace operations even, right? And this was for some years how the NATO was seen. So we didn't close it, we didn't bring it into the EU, Americans remained and the Canadians, etc., and it was another perception, another role of NATO. However, as you can see, recently in the last at least a decade, and definitely since 2008 when Russia started to intervene in Georgia, and then in 2014 when Russia took Crimea in the hybrid operation, NATO, perception of NATO slowly was back to when we started. So NATO now, it's very clear, Russia is again the major threat, the now openly an enemy, because that's how Russians positions themselves towards the West. So NATO's mandate is back to what it was, to protect Europe, now enlarged Europe, and many more NATO members, 30 countries, from any aggression, and especially Russian aggression, taking into consideration what's happening to Ukraine. So again, NATO is back, but in the same time, so that's the lesson, that we are back with the structure of military protection and conventional capacities of the battle on the battlefield. However, and that's the next lesson, in the environment which changed, we also have new threats. Because Russia is an old threat, ex-Soviet Union, but we have new threats, which has been a challenge for NATO itself. NATO was not formed for handling these challenges, so it had to, and it's still under transformation because of these new threats. First of all, cyber threats, cyber security as the whole huge area of being expanded, being exposed to an attack. And I don't need to tell you how many cyber attacks have been taken. We are on constant cyber attack in Poland. And I think most of the NATO members constantly see the cyber attacks of the critical infrastructure, our airport, our foreign guests came to. We know it from the first source, people who protect the airport. So the data, the processes, the systems are on constant attack. And second is information war. So information became really a battlefield per se, and we have disinformation phenomenon, and we have Russian trolls, and we have fake accounts on social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And we have a huge phenomenon of influencing public opinion in democratic countries. Even illiberal democracies are very affected because, for example, in Hungary, thanks to such narratives, more than 50% of Fidesz supporters believe that, the 60 even, believe that Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is a fault of the West. It's not a fault, 64%. So we are constantly under threat from this regard, our societies, our media, our thinking, yeah? And we have to face it. We have to build the capacity to not only to know that it's happening, but it's also to fight it. Algorithms, as you can see, we can also use not only to harm somebody, but also to protect ourselves. And it's already happening that it's not only the trolls factories, but it's also the companies who are trying to discover these trolls campaigns and fight them. And lastly, my last comment would be about NATO's future. We say that there is no one else than Putin who helped us to integrate more, but you were mentioning about so many issues between the Balkan countries. Most of the Balkan countries are in NATO already, not all, but we are still missing, Bosnia, we are missing Serbia, of course, but we have already Montenegro, North Macedonia, we have Albania, Slovenia, Croatia. So in a way, NATO, even before the EU, NATO is a platform of cooperation between the Balkan countries. So the further integration, the full integration into NATO structure of those who are still out, it's a big challenge. Because of course, as you can see, in the time of war, the enlargement will be more difficult. The case would be Ukraine. But in the same time, we have Finland and Sweden. So this is also another angle of the same process, that in the time of peace, it didn't happen because these countries wanted to stay neutral as their history. In the time of war, they decided to jump into, and there will be new NATO members very, very soon, which hardly strongly influences the security architecture of Europe in a positive way. So that's a very important development, thanks to Putin, thanks to aggression on Ukraine. So it means that in a way the war helps us to integrate. We have still 4 countries who are out of NATO, which is Austria, Cyprus, Ireland, and Malta. So 4 EU member states are not the NATO members. So that's a question mark. If and when, if any, we will have them in the alliance. And in this case, I will conclude by saying that the last thing which is missing, and that's the huge battle to do, is trust. You were saying that there is no trust among the Balkans countries. But unfortunately, we don't have full trust. Not only among the NATO members, we have still doubts about the United States. We are waiting for the next elections in 2 years. If Trump is back, what will happen? And then we have also issues like you mentioned Greece, but we have Turkey. So trust is really the huge challenge for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may, to be a chair, to add 3 additional remarks concerning the issue. As you probably remember, when current administration in the US came to power with Joe Biden, his major slogan was "America is back" after Trump administration. From our Polish perspective, what's going on, especially this year, 2022, not only America is back, NATO is back, and I am happy to see that Małgorzata just mentioned that words. This is point number 1. NATO is back, and why it is so important. On the one hand, this is point number 2, we have hard power politics, big power politics again on the global arena. So hard power counts, while the European Union as a process, as a project, is self-defined as soft power or normative power. So we have a problem, and that's why we need NATO to be back. And finally, the third additional remark, I happen to be all my life an old China hand. And looking from this perspective, from the distance, we have a war in Europe. And not only from February 24th, 2022. This is the war initiated by forceful annexation of Crimea in 2014. You also mentioned that, but I will underline the mental change which it brought about. Because since then, we have this Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and we had immediately diversification of approach towards Russia and China. Some countries were, like Serbia or Hungary, to be engaged, while the others, starting from Baltic states and Poland, security reasons, not business or economic or trade reasons, were on the top. So you do remember, maybe not the youngest among us, that in 1990s, Bill Clinton emerged on the global arena and during the campaign. Economy is stupid. And we were engaged for more than 2 decades only in economy, in trade, in exchange. But unfortunately, since 2014, and especially this year, we have another slogan. Not economy stupid, security stupid, in all dimensions, including cyber, and here NATO and OECE, this cooperative security idea that we have so many challenges in front of the humankind that we need to cooperate with the Balkans, with the other regions. We need to cooperate to survive. Sorry for this intervention, but I suppose it was important. And now we will exercise the cyber, because the next speaker of ours, we will try to connect by the online connection, and I see that Professor Todor Lakic from University of Montenegro is with us. Professor, welcome in Warsaw. I hope in Montenegro there is no snowing and no frost. You will be bringing some warm come to us. And please do remember that as a chair, I gave everyone of participants in my panel some 12 minutes time. You can, yes. I can, liberally, I can give you 13 minutes, 1 minute plus, because you are talking to us from a distance. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, very much. I hope that everyone can hear me and that the technology is working fine. First of all, I would like to thank all the professors that talked before me. These were great lectures, especially Professor Malgor Shata, if I pronounce it right. I think your lessons were really good, and some of my data and quantitative research that I found in recent days about support of and opinion polls of Montenegrin and Serbian society about war in Ukraine will be really indicative for the things that you also mentioned. Yes, here in Montenegro is rainy. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to arrive in Warsaw, but hopefully, and there will be very soon a chance for me to attend in Warsaw and to visit beautiful Poland, which I visited earlier. So I will now share my presentation. Hopefully it will be successful. So the title of my panel is Russian Influence in Western Balkans, but I have to mention that the focus of my research were Montenegro and Serbia, and in partly Bosnia and Herzegovina, since I will be talking a little about one of the two entities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republika Srpska. I'm a PhD candidate in Russian political thought, and here are the contacts if anyone would like to have some cooperation with my faculty or university. Following what Andrei Tsigankov called the vectors of Russian foreign policy, I believe that Russian influence in the Western Balkans, or in the Balkans as a whole, relies on several vectors. And these vectors and the existence of these vectors is the result of the so-called zeitgeist of the past and present, that is religion, ideology, economy, and overall politics. All these vectors provides Russia with the ability to use both hard and soft power as instruments of foreign policy here on the Balkans and in the Western Balkans typically. The term Western Balkans is a geopolitical term, not entirely geographical. The first conference of the countries of the Western Balkans was held in the end of August 2014, and it was a project of back then German Chancellor Angela Merkel. And delegations from all countries of the former Yugoslavia gathered and along with delegations from Albania, Austria, and Germany decided to create unofficial geopolitical forum or but non-organization, that is Western Balkans. Today, Western Balkans is consisted of all former Yugoslav republics, except for Slovenia and Croatia, which became part both of the NATO and the European Union. And there is also Albania as a member of the Western Balkans also. The Balkans is one of the geographical areas that had a special place in Russian foreign policy for centuries. I would like to emphasize several of them, and I wouldn't like to bother you a lot with history. Even during the time of Imperial Russia and the rule of the Romanov family, the Balkans were an important strategic place in the relations between Russia and Western European countries, but especially between Russia and Ottoman empires. There is a strong foothold and stronghold of the Russias, even since the 17th century, and that is Orthodoxy. The religion is a key and I would say most important factor that Russian foreign policy relies on, and it is one of the key things that connects most of the countries of Western Balkans with Russia. That is both Serbia and Montenegro, and part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina in this case. In addition to the religious vector of Russian foreign policy, the October Revolution of the 1917, I know it's long, it was long ago, but I would like to mention, because there is consistency of the Russian-Balkan relations even during the times when Russia abandoned monarchy and abandoned its monarchistic and imperial design of Romanov family, and decided back in 1917 to choose different paths, Bolshevik paths, the path of communist repression. And Yugoslavia had also the same problem, and since 1945 and the end of the World War II, Yugoslavia was also a communist state. So I believe that ideology, even from the past, that is communism, is also a link for the strong Russian presence and a base for Russian foreign policy today. Russia's foreign policy towards Serbia represents the most fruitful foreign policy of Russia towards any Western Balkans country. Historical analysis provides insight into the fact that Serbia and Russia had the same experiences through the past and were allies in international politics. I will mention several of these as evidences. For example, Serbia's fight against Ottoman Empire received help from Russia. In the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, there was a spread of pan-Slavistic ideas in Serbia, and it was parallel in the Russian Empire in Serbia. Also, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which is professed by the majority of both Russian and Serbs, is a strong link. Also, the two countries were allies in the First World War, and although debatable in principle, allies in World War II. And at the end of the 20th century, when NATO had intervention and bombed Yugoslavia, Russia was strongly condemning this act. And this is very important to mention because of the recent developments in Ukraine and Ukrainian war. To this day, Russian international political thought will largely refer to the bombing of Serbia in the 1999 and the consequent independence of Kosovo as a precedent for interventionism in the 21st century. Last time we heard that call in the case of Ukraine in Donbass, both in 2014 and in 2022, when the Kosovo precedent was used by Russian politicians as some way of explanation and legitimization of everything that happened in Ukraine since February or since 2014 as an act of legitimization in international politics. So today, Russia remains a strong supporter of Serbian territorial integrity, since it declines to support Kosovo's independence along with China. And today, Russia's policy towards Serbia rests on several fundamental policies. That is, economy, with Russia as a source of gas for Serbia. I will now show you this slide. I will not talk about this since I have little time left, but you will see here that during the 2000s, from 2003 to 2012, there was a strong economic offensive of Russia in the region, especially in Serbia, since Serbia acts along with Montenegro as a hub for Russian foreign policy. For example, a total share of Serbian gas production and gas networks is held by Russian firms. So this is the strong footprint, economic footprint of Russia today in Serbia. When we talk about overall data, Serbian export to Russia is only 4.74% share of total export of Serbia to state or to all states of the world, and Serbian import from Russia is similarly 4.58% share of the total. But although these numbers are not high, they are low, but the presence is concentrated. It is concentrated especially on the energy sector, and that is why the gas is such an important issue, not only in Russian-European relations, but also the Russian-Western Balkans relations. And there is one strong evidence of that relations, economic relations. Recently, in the midst of the Ukrainian war, Serbia has agreed with Russia on a new long-term gas contract. Under the new agreement with the Russian energy giant Gazprom, Serbia will pay approximately $400 per 1,000 cubic meters of Russian natural gas, and that price is far away from the prices that Russia has for other European countries, and almost 4 times less than these other European countries pay. Meanwhile, professor before me mentioned Hungary. I will mention it again. Hungary and Serbia have agreed to build a pipeline to supply Serbia with Russian Urals crude via the Druzhba oil pipeline, as Belgrade's shipments via Croatia fall under EU sanctions towards Russia. So from the 2003 up to 2012, Russia was improving its economic presence in the Balkans, in the Serbia, to be more precise. And after that, we have a new path of Russian foreign policy towards Balkans. Professor Sekrieru called it as a Russian challenge to the world order, and indeed it was. I would also like to emphasize the public opinion of citizens of Serbia as traditionally Russophile, and both Serbian and Montenegrin public opinion of citizens is marked as traditionally Russophile. We already mentioned what are the reasons for this. These are the centuries-old connections of Serbia, monarchist, communist, democratic Serbia through history, with all forms of the Russian state, from imperial monarchist Russia to communist or democratic, autocratic Russia today. The largest number of Serbian citizens, 76%, believe that Russia is Serbia's friend, according to relevant survey from March 2022. So it was conducted in the time when the Ukrainian war already started. This is an extremely high level of national consensus of any foreign policy issue. And I will add that domestic, this is the highest level of national consensus of nation, even in domestic policy. Although membership in the EU has been Serbia's strategic goal since 2005, only 9% of respondents believe that it is Serbia's main foreign policy priority. Additionally, recent polls, which I had insight into, suggest that as many as 80%, and I actually repeat the number, 80% oppose the introduction of sanctions against Russia. It is noteworthy to emphasize that Serbia didn't introduce high volume of sanctions against Russia concerning war in Ukraine, although it was obliged to do so in the context of harmonization of its foreign policy with the EU's foreign policy. When it comes to the Russian soft power in the region, I would recommend the great work of Okay, I will. I just wanted to say that I recommend strongly the research of Mrs. Zapala about media content and networks of media sharing that relies on the ethnic, Slavic, and Orthodox religious identity when we talk about Russian media in the Balkans, such as Russia Today or Sputnik. when it comes to the Montenegro, we have similar situation. And I would just like to add something about Montenegrin public opinion polls. So these opinion polls were conducted in June 2022. It was become sufficiently far from the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and it is sufficient evidence of traditional Russophilia in Montenegro. 38.9% of citizens of Montenegro believe that Russia has committed aggression against Ukraine, but 17.8% say that it was Russia's defense against the expansion of NATO, and 14.8% say that Russia attacked Ukraine, but to defend itself. 39% therefore think that the culprit is Russia, while around a third of the citizens of Montenegro justify Russia, and with a large percent of neutral stances. Additionally, just for a reminder, Montenegro aligned its foreign policy fully with the EU and the USA. Montenegro joined the sanctions packages against Russia, but I would like to emphasize that Montenegrin society remains traditionally Russophile for the reasons I mentioned on the beginning. But I believe that these numbers will be indicative for future researches and maybe for some joint research of public opinion in Western Balkans, maybe in the months or next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping your time. We were happy to have a good connection with you. And if I may, I would like to ask you to stay with us at least for the time being, because you will be definitely interested in the next presentation, which is pre-recorded. Professor Lakic was talking about Russian influence in Western Balkans, while Professor Małgorzata Łaskota-Micker from University of Wrocław will be talking also about Russian influence, but in Professor Lakic, Montenegro. So we will have two perspectives. Professor Małgorzata is not with us. She is pre-recorded. She doesn't know in advance my iron rule of 12 minutes, but we ask for recording some approximately 15 minutes. So I will ask our technicians to put her online, and we are waiting for the next presentation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to thank the originators of the project carried out with great commitment and success for inviting me to participate in it. I'm sorry that I cannot attend the event today in person. The political situation in Montenegro, which I come to follow on a daily basis as a Polish representative of the embassy in Podgorica, did not allow me to reach you. On the other hand, I'm also a research and teaching staff member at the University of Wrocław with a long-standing interest in events in the Western Balkans. So please let me share my personal observations on the current situation in the country of my accreditation from maybe this perspective. Montenegro, until let's say 2 years ago, considered a viable candidate for EU membership, appreciated for its commitment to integration, has suddenly slowed its pace. It has found itself in a situation where the further sense of its independent raison d'être is being considered. Russia had a part to participate in it, of course, in part faithful to the Kremlin's policies. Serbia. The political and economic ties and the sympathy the Serbian public has for Russia have allowed the former, with the use of Serbian media, politicians and secret services, to duplicate the assumption of Russian propaganda. It has also allowed Belgrade to realize its ideas about Greater Serbia. With its Russian roots and historical background, Russia over the years has managed to create a network of connections with which it has shrouded Montenegro. Russian influence in Montenegro is evident at almost every level, from media to the church, to politics and party divisions. Russian interference in Montenegro's internal affairs threatens its stability and security. Russian propaganda undermines the foundations of the Montenegrin state, Montenegrin national identity, and the democratic process. It leads to a dangerous polarization of society. The actions taken through the Serbian Orthodox Church are in line with Russia's expectations. The intensification is particularly evident since 2016. Although its first manifestations could be seen as early as 2014, so it means after the outbreak of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. The final decision on Montenegro's accession to NATO was a clear sign of Russia's support for the West's actions. An attempt in 2016 to remove from the political scene the main leader, Milo Djukanovic, promoting the country's EU Atlantic path, failed. In 2017, Montenegro became a member of NATO. Just 1 year later, Milo Djukanovic took office as president. Russian activity in the Western Balkans and Montenegrin impotence, triggered, among other things, by its inability to cope with the internal political rifts taking place in subsequent years, made the Kremlin's authoritarian rule increasingly tangible in Montenegro. Russia, through the media, direct investments in the private sector, support for the Orthodox Church, and of course the use of the argument of a common historical heritage and the financing of opposition groups intensified its activities and the pursuit of its political goals in Montenegro. The opposition's attempts to democratize the state on August 30, 2020, which led to a change of government twice in just 2 years, and the ousting of the monopolistic DPS party from the state structures, parliamentary and local elections, and cemented Montenegro's vulnerability to outside influence. Dritan Bazovic, as another head of government after Zdravko Krivokapic, allowed himself to be drawn into Alexander Vucic's political games and Kremlin policies. The deep political, institutional, financial, and security crisis with which the country is currently struggling are factors that could push Montenegro either further into the arms of Greater Serbia and Russia, allow them to rebuild their lost spheres of influence in the region. But please, let's take a briefly look at these mentioned links. We can start from media. In 2005, Russia launched its international TV channel Russia Today, which covered more than 100 countries around the world, including, of course, Serbia and Montenegro at the time. In 2014, the Sputnik's news agency entered the media market. After the fourth wave of democratization and the annexation of Crimea, the stations changed the rhetoric to a more aggressive one. This was, among other things, a response to the sanction imposed on Russia by the West, including, of course, Montenegro. Russia media by then were already seizing opportunities, drawing attention to issues that divided Western societies, making attempts to bring about their polarization. Even the banning of Russia Today and Sputnik did not yield results. In Montenegro, the Serbian TV stations like, for example, Pink and Happy, which relied the content of Russian messages, were still available and, of course, still are. For example, in October this year, Serbian TV Adria was granted national broadcaster status in Montenegro. Serbian TV stations nowadays dominate the Montenegrin media market. Since the annexion of Crimea, there has been increasing talk of the use of Russia's foreign directed intelligence services. GRU, SWR, for example, which have been scouting the territory and creating networks to carry out subversive activities that are an integral part of Russia's foreign policy and, of course, hybrid warfare. In 2022, the Montenegrin National Security Agency came into possession of information according to which retired Foreign Ministry employee Mr. Radomir Sekulovic was a part of a spy network formed by Russian military intelligence officer Igor Zaitsev. At the end of September 2022, Sekulovic was arrested on charges of collaboration with Russian special services. Along with him, more than 30 Russian citizens living in Montenegro. At the same time, the Montenegrin Foreign Ministry declared 6 Russian diplomats as persona non grata. This is the third expulsion of Russian diplomats from Montenegrin territory in the same year. But let's start from the beginning. In February of this year, the Montenegrin daily Pobieda published information about a secret meeting between Parliament Speaker Strahinja Bulajic from Democratic Front and Russian agents and diplomats. One of them, Viktor Antipin, was declared persona non grata and expelled a few days later. The meetings were aimed at influencing Montenegrin parliament speaker and pushing back his decision to schedule a parliamentary session. And this was to prolong the process of forming a minority government. Then, former National Security Agency Director Dejan Vukšić is also suspected of working for Russian interests, as University of Montenegro rector Vladimir Božović, who was one of the founders of the AN for Us news portal. In addition to the media and intelligence, the Orthodox Church has been also involved. In countries sharing similar religious views, it has proven to play a key role, of course. In the tradition of Serbian Orthodoxy, one can put an equal sign between the nation and the state and the church. Despite the fact that in 2006, Montenegro separated from Serbia, the Serbian ethnos, the Orthodox Church, remained an important symbol of Serbian Montenegro. Despite the severance of the state connection, it has inscribed itself as a key entity, the nucleus of the Serbian nation's identity. In Montenegro, a split is evident between those who seek their own identity, of course declare themselves as Montenegrins, wanting to separate from the Serbian Orthodox Church, and Serbian structures that want to restore the former union of Serbia and Montenegro through the Orthodox Church. Milo Djukanovic was right when he said that the Orthodox Church is the most dangerous instrument of Serbian nationalism in the Balkans. International observers became convinced of this when the enthronement of the Metropolitan of the Serbian Orthodox Church as Patriarch of the Montenegrin Orthodox Church took place in September 2021. The signing of the law on freedom of religion and the basic agreement between Montenegro and Serbian Orthodox Church regulating the state's relation with the religious community became further manifestations. The Russians have also taken an interest in Montenegro's mining and tourism sectors. In 2005, Montenegro's aluminium plant, named KAP, Kombinat Aluminiuma Podgorica, the largest industrial plant in Montenegro, was privatized. Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, who heads the Rusal company, became the leading shareholder. Also, a bauxite mine was placed in Russian hands. But as a result of the economic crisis, there were mass layoffs in 2008. And in 2012, the Montenegrin government terminated Deripaska's contract, accusing him of driving the historic company into the bankruptcy. In 2013, KAP was totally declared bankrupt. In 2022, an anonymous official from the US State Department reported that Oleg Deripaska, of course very well known from his close ties to Vladimir Putin, secretly participated in financing the Democratic Front in 2016 and possibly before the 2018, before presidential elections in Montenegro, led the signing of contracts and the creation of offshore companies. Russia's goal at the time was to secure just influence abroad and threaten Montenegrin democracy. There is no denying that the financing of the party that came to power in 2020 parliamentary elections is still ongoing. The Montenegrin Tourism Organization indicates that 6 years after Montenegro regained its independence, Russians have taken possession of more than 30% of Montenegrin real estate, including, of course, hotels, guest houses, mainly on the Montenegrin coast. The Russian Montenegrin company Montenegro Star became the owner of the largest hotels in Budva, the most expensive, of course, like Splendid, Blue Star Montenegro. 85% of the company's shares were owned by Russian tycoon Viktor Ivanenko, former head of Russia's KGB. Even COVID did not stop the Russians from their expansion into the Balkans. After Prime Minister Zdravko Krivokapic came to power in August 2020, the Montenegrin Tourism Organization was betting on intensifying cooperation with Russia and, of course, rebuilding relations. Visa restrictions for Russians were dismissed after the new finance minister Milojko Spajic announced he would keep the borders open for tourists and lift restrictions on entry to Montenegro. Despite the outbreak of war in Ukraine, the economic citizenship program introduced in 2019 was maintained. Its implementation was scheduled to the end of 2021, but by a decision of the new authorities, the program was extended until the end of 2022, allowing, of course, rich Russians to settle in Montenegro and acquiring second citizenship, Montenegrin citizenship. Figures from the Montenegrin Ministry of Economic Development and Tourism show that 409 golden passports had been granted to foreigners by September this year, of which 2/3 to, of course, Russian citizens. Presidential elections are scheduled for spring 2023. For me, one thing is certain. Montenegro's interests are at stake. The West remains its salvation. In Montenegro, in the face of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, does not seize the opportunity to integrate with the EU, does not find a way to cooperate across party lines to unblock key judicial institutions, to introduce the necessary reforms in the rule of law, dangerous consequences may follow. The apparent post-2020 focus on the ruling parties on the interests of the Serbian Orthodox Church and the interests of the Serbian president in exchange for looking after their own national interests undermine the legitimacy of Montenegro as a separate state. After the adoption of the amendment law on freedom of religion, the signing of the basic agreement with Serbian Orthodox Church, and amendment to the law on the president, the census will be another round of the struggle to destroy Montenegro. This is sure to place Serbia and Russia, which skillfully plays on public disconnect and the feelings of citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, after being for some time in cyberspace and online, time to come back to reality. Somebody who is with us, but one comment concerning this previous presentation, which is to my mind very important one, that dealing with the issues we are discussing in our panel, we should remember that not only strategy, economy or trade is at stake, more and more important seems to be the system of values and axiology, even Orthodox Church and also media. So the situation is much more complicated than we could expect at the very beginning. Now it is a real pleasure to welcome again our dear friend from Istanbul, Özgün Erlel, friend of our center. She will present, as it is necessary, a Turkish perspective on the subject. I remember a few years ago when I was for the first time going to Bitola, small town, and I was tremendously surprised that Atatürk was attending the military academy there. So I understand next year, Özgün, you will arrange anniversary festivities in this small town in the 100th year of Turkish Revolution. So who knows? What it means that without Turkey, you cannot imagine the Balkans. Turkey was there, Turkey is there, and for 100%, in some way Turkey will be there. What way we would like to listen to.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. So it has been really meaningful for me to be here for a conference, because I also studied at this university Polish language. My PhD is about Poland foreign policy. That was something like 15 years ago. I started my adventure here in Poland, and just right after I finished my PhD, my first conference as a speaker was also here, and Bogdan was also the chair again. So now I became a professor of international relations.
Pillars.
Yes, yes. And we have been coordinating lots of projects together. Also in Turkey and in Poland, we done public diplomacy projects again with University of Warsaw and the Centrum for Europe team. So it's really good for me to be here and share my ideas with you as a Turkish expert. So I am also dealing with public diplomacy and soft power issues and new types of diplomacy in international relations, from public to digital, from space diplomacy to science diplomacy. But here I am with my identity of someone coming from Turkey and trying to enlighten a little bit Turkish approach in the Balkans, or Turkish activities in the Balkans in terms of public diplomacy and soft power issues. So when we talk about soft power and public diplomacy, it's obvious that public diplomacy is an instrument used by political actors in order to create soft power in some policy areas. And it has been in two ways: state to public or public to public. So we all know how state to public public diplomacy activities work, the use of official tools and channels to the public. And when it comes to public activities, civil elements such as NGOs, research centers, programs, associations, foundations are employed. So in this regard, in total, public diplomacy goes beyond official communication between officials, diplomats, and foreign communities right now. And Turkey has been considered one of the successful applicator, or one of the successful countries that use soft power and public diplomacy, especially in the Balkans, to create cooperation, communication, and to help the development of the relations in the Balkans. And generally also it has been also criticized in some way, but the positive effects are much more than the ones that have been criticized. So now, starting with this reality that we have been listening to Russia and other, so the panel is called Poland and Balkan states and regional players. So there has been an increasing global competition over the Balkans when it comes to global actors and regional players. Turkey may not be a major playmaker in the Balkans, but is historically one of the most important actors, to be honest. And it, as Bogdan also initiated, it has been probably like this over the decades, and we expect that Turkey will be in the region in terms of the cooperation and supporter of development of the region. So we have been as regional policies should be evaluated differently from other global actors in several aspects when it comes to Turkey. So first of all, we have humanitarian relations base and geography and history. So in these three dimensions, we can describe how Turkey is having public diplomacy in the Balkans. So the main issue is the ability to bring stability, peace, and progress to the Balkans. So Turkish initiative started like this when we start to create some institutional ties also in the region. So I underline this, the ability to bring stability, peace, and progress in the Balkans. And we put really big importance to inclusiveness, win-win principle in the region, and ensuring stability. So Turkish role as a balancing and stabilizing actor can be observed mostly into socio-economic, cultural, and political fields, and also in some terms economical ones. And so when it comes to regional policies, differently from other global actors in the region, first we can start with humanitarian relations. One of the most important dynamics in Turkey-Balkan relations is that, and the population of Balkan origin in Turkey and the non-governmental organizations established by the Balkan origin people in Turkey is also potentially an important factor that affects Turkish foreign policy towards the Balkan and generally soft power uses and public diplomacy issues. So the Balkan origin NGOs and people living in Turkey and the interaction of Turkish citizens of Balkan region with Turkish and Muslim people in the Balkans is the most important distinguishing feature in that sense. Turkey is an actor from within the region, as also being a Balkan country, a part of this geography. So it defines the policy tools in a, inevitable way. And therefore, Turkey's perceptions of the region are different when we compare, for example, United States or China and other big powers. And history, of course. So we have a common history with people in the region, and in the centuries we lived together under the roof of the Ottoman Empire. So this Ottoman heritage is also another effective factor that shapes Turkish presence or Turkish policy in the region. And we have common case of language, culture, daily life practices. Yesterday we talked with the professors about lots of things that are in common when it comes Balkanian countries and not only Macedonia, all the region and Turkey. So when you look at the official official determinants, Turkey is maintaining peace and stability in the region. And for example, we send our troops to international peacekeeping operations all the time. We are supporting integration of Balkanian countries to NATO and European Union. We supported both Dayton Agreement and Mahdi Ahtisaari plan, for example, that gave independence to Kosovo, and also joining of Albania and Croatia to NATO and Macedonia, also strongly encouraged by Turkey. And Turkey also opposed the isolation of Macedonia by Greece and supported its membership to EU and NATO. So these are the official tools that you can all the time see when you search the websites of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for example. But as an observer from the country, from Turkey, I can also say that we are having multi-dimensional diplomacy in the region. And it's not when it comes to public-to-public relations in terms of public diplomacy, some institutions and some programs created by Turkish government are really important tools of the relations between Turkey and Balkanian regions. Not only Balkanian, sometimes maybe you hear it's in Central Asia, in Caucasia, we are also having actively working NGOs or institutions or governmental programs there. So one of them is for example, Diyanet, which is President of the Religious Affairs completely as a part of the state, is conducting some programs, for example, reconstruction of mosques in the region after the war. But some specific institutions like TİKA, maybe some of you heard about this Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, which is established in 1992, so right after the Cold War. And it is a really important player now because it has conducting projects in 150 countries in all over the world and operating in 60 countries with 62 projects. And 11 of them that TİKA is operating are Balkanian countries. So TİKA is providing financial aid or supporting some development projects, and also the TICA works with an approach that involves sharing Turkey's development experience with other countries, relies on the understanding of cooperation partnerships. So it initiates and assists several projects abroad in terms of health, security, education, renovation, infrastructure, and institutionalization in the Balkans. So with technical assistance, for example, I give you some numbers. Foreign aid provided by Turkey has increased its activities 300% more when we compare it at the beginning of the 2000. And the financial aid supported, given by TICA, the number was $85 million at the beginning of the 2002. In 2016, it's $6.5 billion, so it's 8 times more. And just what you can ask, what kind of projects, what kind of development aid it is. It's just for schools, monuments, heritage structures, and lots of cooperation activities, like as a part of the public diplomacy and cultural diplomacy issue. So we also have another program which is called Presidency for Turks Abroad and Related Communities, which is called YTB. And this institution is providing scholarships generally for the students who want to study in Turkey. And it was established in 2010. It's a strategic communication tool, and its aim is to strengthen, again, economic, social, and cultural ties among the related communities from the same lineage through organizing activities and this Turkish language motivation. So we have also Yunus Emre Institute, again established in 2009, and it has 63 cultural centers abroad, and in all over the Balkanian regions you can observe how Yunus Emre also operating for development of Turkish language and cultural ties. So finally we have, of course, Turkish series and soap operas, which are really popular in terms of the soft power issue. When we talk about Turkey, I have seen lots of even PhD dissertations about this issue, how Turkish soap operas or TV shows have been important tools of soft power in all over the regions that Turkey wants to be effective. And I give you some numbers, it's really interesting. According to Eurodata, Turkish shows now comprise 25% of the important shows around the world. Turkey only serves for 25% of it, and are expected to top 1 billion in global sales in 2023. And currently, Turkey is the second largest exporter of TV series in the world after United States. So this means something for me as an expert of public diplomacy. Of course, while I am going to conclude, some of the activities or some of the approaches created by Turkey also criticized by some communities as a neo-Ottoman approach. This is the challenge for Turkish activities in the Balkans in general. But the main thing is here that Turkey's changed its foreign policy a little bit, not a little bit, really much, with AKP government also having its face to West, but also considering the East as foreign policy priority area. So I don't think there's a shift of axis as a popular term in IR, but it's obvious that Turkey also faces to the east much more comparing with the 80 years past from the AKP government. And but the official says that this is not a neo-Ottomanist approach. We are not conducting such a policy. We are trying to develop relations with Middle East, Africa, Caucasia, Balkanian regions to protecting historical and cultural heritage of Ottoman Empire, let's say. So I can conclude with this, just a challenge for our public diplomacy issue, and it's limited time. It's hard to talk about everything, but at least I give you some bullet points from the Turkish experience.
Thank you. As was expected, Turkey was there, Turkey is there, Turkey will be there to such an extent that one of the Visegrad countries is already paying more attention, Mr. Orban, to Turan than Visegrad Group, so Turkish People Assembly. So we are looking forward what will happen next. Finally, during our panel, we have another pre-recorded presentation from the beautiful city of Niš in southern part of Serbia, Professor Roland Ilic, Challenges in Relations between Serbia and European Union is the title of this last presentation. Our technicians, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan Ilic. I am assistant professor at the law faculty at the university in Niš, Serbia. And I will present for you today topic about for our international scientific conference. My topic is challenges in relation between Serbia and European Union. First of all, I would like to tell you something about accession of Serbia to the European Union. Actually, Serbia's accession to the European Union has been on the current agenda of future EU enlargement since 2012, when Serbia became a candidate for accession. Serbia officially applied for membership in the European Union on December 2009. Accession negotiations are currently ongoing. It's one of the 5 current candidate countries for EU membership, along with Albania, then Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Turkey. What were important dates in this process? On 7th November 2007, Stabilization and Association Agreement between the European Union and Serbia was ratified. EU for 2 sides that agreed on the final version of the text, which should be slightly modified or remain unchanged, which is a move that is preceded by a formal signing. The European Union unblocked trade agreements with Serbia on December 7, 2009. Then on December 19 of the same year, the Schengen countries approved visa liberalization for the citizens of Serbia. Serbia officially applied for membership in the European Union on December 22, 2009. Furthermore, I want to say a few words about negotiation steps. Serbia initially granted the candidate status of the March 1st, 2014. Negotiations were opened on January the same year, and the first chapters that were opened on December 2015. In December the same year, 2015, Serbia opened chapter 32 and 35. In July on next year, opened chapters 23 and 24. Next year, Serbia opens chapter 5 and 25 and close chapter 25. And on December 2019, Serbia opened chapter 4. On December 14, 2021, Serbia opened also chapters 14 and 15, then 21 and 27. And now, how far have we come up to date? Although the process was initially launched in 2005, so far only 2 of 35 chapters have been closed, and from 2009 to the end of 2021, no new ones have been opened. There has been a stalemate in the accession process. In negotiation with the European Union, Serbia opens 22 of all 35 chapters, covering areas where Serbia must meet set criteria in order to become an EU member. So far, only chapter 25 and 26, which was about science and research and education and culture, have been temporarily closed. In the meantime, the system of negotiations by chapter was moved to the so-called clusters, chapters which was chapters grouped by similarity. In December 2021, cluster 4 of the environment and energy was opened. We can say that after Turkey and Montenegro, Serbia is the country that has been negotiating with the EU for the longest time. What about clusters? In the meantime, in 2020, negotiations began through so-called clusters when the European Union adopted a new enlargement methodology. The previous 35 chapters are grouped into 6 clusters, which are rule of law, then market, economy, green agenda, agriculture, and foreign relations. In order for the cluster to be open, EU needs to recognize the process in harmonizing Serbian laws with European ones in a certain area. However, in December 2021, after 2 years of stagnation, Serbia continued accession negotiations and cluster 4 on the environment and energy was opened. The cluster consists of 4 predefined negotiating chapters: transport policy, energy, trans-European network, and the environment and climate change. The latest projection shows that Serbia could end the negotiations in 2025, but now that deadline is quite uncertain. This is why the Serbia have some problems between EU. These problems are in key sectors that are important for closing. All chapters boil down to the rule of law. Within this area, Serbia is not achieving the required results. The problem of corruption, insufficient level of media freedom, and transparency in the work of state bodies is especially emphasized. Also, normalization of relations with Kosovo is also a major obstacle. There were delays in the negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina. Negotiations are now unblocked, but at the level of technical dialogue. The key issue is the demand for mutual recognition of Serbia and Kosovo. This request is not formally mentioned anywhere in official EU acts, but the German Chancellor, during the recent visit to Belgrade, explicitly mentioned for the first time that the final goal of the negotiation is mutual recognition. Serbia will fulfill this condition since it means an official reunification of a part of its territory, but and that would be in conflict with the constitution of Serbia. And also, new obstacle is now war in Ukraine. A new obstacle on Serbia's path to the Union is the war in Ukraine. European officials are demanding that Serbia harmonize its policy with the EU foreign policy. Regarding the introduction of sanctions against Russia, Serbia supported the resolution UN condemning the aggression against Ukraine, and furthermore, a few of resolutions of the EU, but for economic reasons, above all energy dependence of Russia, of course, it hesitates to impose sanctions on Russia. Also, we have in Serbia one trend. This is so-called growing Euroscepticism from year to year, as various research shows. The support of the people of Serbia for joining the EU is declining. According to one of the last ones from November of the last year, just over half of the participants in the research of the advisory group for public policy Balkans in Europe voted for Serbia's membership in the EU. To the question, are you in favor of your country's entry into EU? Only 53% of Serbian citizens answered in the affirmative and 43% said no. For example, residents of Albania said in 94% that are for entry into EU, and one research in Kosovo, 90% of the citizens expressed greater support for membership. With also in Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's about 83% and 79% in North Macedonia. Citizens of the countries in the region believe that full membership is the best option of their country, and only respondents in Serbia have given priority to economic integration without EU membership. As a conclusion, I can say that Serbia has come a long and difficult way since the beginning of the accession process. This process has been going on for the second decade, and the progress is not satisfactory, of course. On the other hand, Serbia uses significant EU pre-accession funds, and foreign trade with EU is on the rise. The EU is Serbia's most important foreign trade partner. There are numerous obstacles on Serbia's further path to the EU, both in the form of harmonization with EU standards and political conditions, such as normalization of relations with Kosovo. The issue of harmonization with EU foreign policy toward the war in Ukraine also remains. Due to the small shift, Euroscepticism is on the rise in Serbia. Majority of citizens believe that European perspective has been betrayed, especially in the light of France's position on further enlargement of the Union to the countries of the Western Balkans. Therefore, I think that new impulses should be encouraged, which would be an encouragement for all countries of the Western Balkans not to give up with the European path and remain only an internal candidate for joining EU. At the end, I want to say that unfortunately I am not be in the position to be in Warsaw in this conference now with you, and also I'm very happy to be the part of this project, and it's my honor to be on this conference with this online recording of my speech. Once again, best regards for all of the participants, best regards for the organizers of the conferences, and that's all of me. Greetings from Serbia.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, even with my iron rule of 12 minutes time, we are almost out of time, but 1 minute and a half has left before the coffee break. Having this opportunity that I'm a chair and being in a liberal system, I will take this opportunity to ask one question for our eminent professor and rector, Goran Ilic, one simple question concerning the title of our panel. The title of our panel, as you see, Poland, the Balkan states, and regional players. Looking, Goran, from the Polish perspective, of Visegrad perspective, of Central European perspective, for a long, long time, definitely after 2004, the major player was the European Union. After the Russian aggression in Ukraine, it's not the European Union anymore, it's United States of America, especially in Poland, with the particular exception of Hungary, where nobody knows who is playing the best. Turan, or maybe Mr. Putin or somebody else. So my simple question, who is the major regional player in the Balkans? Maybe Turkey, maybe China. We talk about Russia. So what is your answer for this simple question?
Thank you very much, Professor. It's not so simple question. Yes, the major player in Balkans is the United States of America. One of the regional players are very small. The Turkey is only one part of it. It's not a major player in the region. I have some interest also in the Turkish foreign policy regarding the Balkans, and yes, I have read and analyzed the big strategic development document, which is very interesting to about neo-communism, etc. But regarding and other countries are not dominant in the Balkans. Turkey may have the capacity to be a regional player, but has a limited area of conflict. Why? Because of, if we talk about neo-Ottomanism, which is a very interesting concept, the problem is with Islamistic course of neo-Ottomanism or Islamistic capacity. And that's the main limitation of this religion. The religion is the main limitation of this attitude. I had published my paper about neo-Ottomanism as a doctrine, and I challenged two main doctrines for active Turkish foreign policy in the Balkans. The first one is neo-Ottoman with Islamistic performances, and the second one I called it Kemalist expansionism. The second one is not official doctrine of Turkish foreign policy, because it is my own opinion, because only based on Kemalist values, the Turkey can spread its influence in the Balkans. Because with religion, it is very limited. Balkan religion is dominant Christian, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Protestant, etc. Only the part of Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina and small part of Macedonia and Albania are with Muslim people. So one of the main pillars of some new future Turkish foreign policy need to be with Kemalist potential, not with Islamist potential. Moreover, because Mustafa Kemal Atatürk has finished his military academy in Beylikdüzü, he has a girlfriend from Mitullah, so I must be on the Kemal Atatürk side, and also we have, I must acknowledge that Macedonia, especially my city of Bitola, as former capital of Romania, that is the European part of the Ottoman Empire, is very supportive to Turkey and vice versa. Moreover, Turkey was one of the countries in the world where Macedonia gained independence after the collapse of Yugoslavia, who firstly acknowledged and recognized the fact of independent Macedonian state and the support of many Turkish presidents, and also from Erdogan also. He came to Macedonia several times, but if we talk to
Coffee break. Ladies and gentlemen, the first session is over. Still two in front of you, but fortunately, right now we have a coffee break. I thank you, Professor Todor Lakic from Montenegro, the professors online. Thank you, Ostur, for being with us. Thank you, Małgorzata. Thank you, Mr. Rector. Our session is over. Please take the opportunity